welcome. Thank you for coming to our second annual New School Minute. My name is Mark Kajigo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I will be your MC for the next 90 minutes. I have a list of the presenters for this afternoon, and the alumni department was kind enough to give me phonetic spellings of most of your names, but I apologize in advance for what I'm about to do to them. I'm very happy to be here. Amy called me this week and asked if I would come and lend my time to be the MC for this program, and I was more than happy to do that. I am a graduate of the drama program in 2008, and of course everyone assumes that being an actor, I am comfortable speaking in front of a large group of people, and I am here to dispel that myth. But I know we're supposed to be brief, so I will jump right into this. I'm really happy to be here for this fascinating program, which is an excellent showcase of all of the interesting ideas and scholarship that comes from our New School faculty. We're going to be starting with our first presentation very shortly, but first, it's my honor to introduce President David Van Zandt, the 8th president of the New School, whose leadership has been instrumental in providing students with opportunities for cross-disciplinary studies. So please, a warm welcome for President Van Zandt.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the second New School Minute. It was a lot of fun last year. I'm sure we'll enjoy it this year as well. It's good to see so many of you here. I hope many of you had an opportunity before now to go to the various events, walk through, see the exhibitions, and just see this marvelous new building. We've had a great response this year to our Alumni Day. I think the registrations were more than double of what they were last year. So we're very happy with that, and we're always finding new ways to try to connect with our alumni. So please, stay interested and stay engaged, and call out to us. Call out to us. I'm getting back down here. There we go. Call out to us in terms of things you want to do. Also, please be sure to share your experiences here on Alumni Day on social media using hashtag New School Alumni. Everybody get that out and do that, okay? I'm especially proud to host you here. This is our new University Center. It was about 3 years in the building and many more years in the planning. In fact, when I first arrived as president, it was a hole in the ground. It's turned into a wonderful, wonderful structure. We opened it back in January. We actually opened our dormitories last August, and that filled up right away. But this January, we opened this part of the building in which we are. And despite having a water main break outside that flooded the 2 basement floors, which we still can't use, the bulk of the building, it opened up and really worked as we expected. It's a place, and maybe for the first time since the 1930s, that the New School's had one location where all students can come and interact, see each other. You can walk through here on any day, and I invite you, if you're in town, please come through and take a look. See students from all the different programs mixing on these landings here or in the cafeteria, which is also fabulous food. So if you're hungry, get something there. Get something in there as well. But it's really it's also a model for sustainability. It's a LEED Gold building. It reflects our commitment to sustainability and the environment. But finally, I think it's a symbol. I think it's a symbol for the New School looking forward. We are the New School after all, and so we're always trying to do things new. And one of the things we're really trying to do now is pull all of our programs together. Just recently, our Parsons Fashion School moved down here from its building on 7th Avenue and 40th Street. And a year and a few months from now, the Manna School of Music will move downtown and join us here on the Greenwich Village campus. Finally, I want to say a special welcome to, there's a portion of our alumni who are joining us live through live stream. Glad you are joining us wherever you are, and please submit questions or comments online. Well, let me turn it over now to the New School Minute. This is a great opportunity to hear about the remarkable work of our faculty across all the various disciplines we have here. And we have a broad range of different disciplines, whether you graduated 50 years ago or just a few months ago. One thing that hasn't changed, I think, is the stature and quality and creativity of our faculty here at the New School, who have always been leaders in their field. So, within just an hour, you will hear about things from jazz, classical music, climate change, information design, drama, literature, punk rock, the blues, rice paddies, parking lots, transnational media studies, banking, economics, poetry, fashion brands, humanitarian design, storytelling, and many more things. Now, this is a bit of a challenge for our faculty because generally we don't restrict them to 1 minute. But just so you know, I'm going to be up here right in the front row, and I'll have my clock on here, so I'll be holding it up, try to keep them within their time frame. So again, enjoy this. We'll see you later at the reception, and welcome back, everyone. Thank you.
If you haven't already, please turn off the ringers on your phones, but do remember to use the hashtag. What President Van Zandt didn't mention is that if you do go over your time, we have to start all over again at the top. So please be mindful. Up first, we have a musical presentation from Jane Ira Bloom. The Todd Oliver talk is Deep Edges, Improvising Slow Songs.
Hi, I teach students how to improvise. And interestingly enough for today, I teach especially how to play slow and how to make what might happen in 50 seconds feel more like a light year. And I do it using melody, deep song, and trying to expand the emotional reach of your playing ability just in that time. And so it might sound something like this.
That was fantastic. All right. Thank you. Next up, Jeffrey Goldfarb, the New School Public Seminar, and Me and You.
First for Jane, wow. Then Public Seminar. We work in the tradition of critical scholarship and public engagement. I'll say that I'm a professor of sociology interested in the problems of democratic culture, public life. I'm the author of many books on this topic. I'm an expert in only one thing, and that's the opposition to a system that no longer exists in Eastern Europe, where I studied these problems. Public Seminar is an outgrowth of that. Public Seminar, we work in the tradition of critical scholarship and public engagement in the original tradition of the New School for Social Research and its University in Exile. PS is an extension of the New School's legendary General Seminar founded by the original Exile scholars. We seek to open up insights of experts to broader publics following the examples of our predecessors, Beard, Dewey, Veblen, Lederer, Speyer, Strauss, Arendt, Haubrenner, Festinger. We struggle to provoke critical and informed discussion by any means necessary, using a variety of writing forms and along with rich media. I'm the editor of this journal, working with colleagues, students, and former students based at the New School and beyond. Virtually, we're trying to create the intellectual community of the New School worldwide. I invite you to join us as readers, commentators, and contributors. Really, write me if you have any questions or ideas. Together, we will constitute a public seminar for the 21st century, www.publicseminar.org.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next, Julia Gordon. It's all a blur.
2 years ago, I woke up in a panic. The room was dark and quiet, and I didn't know where I was. And I thought, how did I get here? And what happened to my dream of being a photographer? I'm really good at helping other people create their work and criticize their work and grow their work and follow their dream, but I'm hard-pressed to find time to do it for myself. I lost track of myself in the daily rush of career, family, a home in the suburbs with a yard that needed the grass cutting all the time. And out of the darkness of this emotional midnight fog, I heard a voice say, start a blog, tell no one, do it for yourself. So when was I going to find time for this, and whom or what would I photograph? I would need a Tumblr. So somebody said, write what you know. And I thought, what do I know? I ride on the train to work. I go to work. I ride on the train home. And I thought that would be my creative space. So I took a lot of photos, and I started posting them. And after about a year, I had a really nice body of work. And I thought I had really done something. I had become, again, someone, a photographer. So a year later, I went to Japan. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to have my lost in translation moment. And I'm going to create these photographs I'd seen in a movie. I woke up in the middle of the night, and this time I had a camera. So I photographed out my window, and I took pictures. So when I came back, I looked at my pictures, and I thought, I missed everything. Somehow, I didn't capture the spirit of my trip. And my son said to me, Mom, why don't you look at them in black and white instead? And I realized that that little statement by someone helped me see something new in my work. So after that, I started to rephotograph my work and to re-edit my work and to find that within every little thing that you do, there's always something that you don't see that you need to bring out. So I started with work that was very literal, and I ended up with work that was much more poetic. So sometimes life is a blur, and then my photos became a blur, and I think they were much sharper that way. So.
Next is Yvonne Ramirez with Climate, Poverty, and Cholera Epidemics.
Hi. Here's my Environmental Health Minute. Recent headlines suggest that infectious diseases are on the rise. Cholera, dengue, malaria, for example. Some blame society. Others blame society and environment, and yet others are blaming climate. Take the case of cholera, a diarrheal disease caused by a waterborne bacteria. Since 1990, cholera has emerged twice in the Western Hemisphere, first in Peru in 1991, and more recently in Haiti in October of 2010. In our examination of the causes, we have several questions to ask. Here are just a few. As individuals, do we fail to take precautions, wash our hands, or cook our food properly? Or does government play a role by not providing equal access to clean water and sanitation? Also, are we creating favorable environments for the bacteria to persist, polluting our rivers and coastal areas? Or is the trend of rising global temperatures creating a favorable environment for the bacteria? Or we might actually consider, could it be the convergence of all of these factors? These are some of the questions that my students and I explore at Eugene Lang. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Next, LaTanya Hall, Storytelling Through Song.
So there's a lot of time spent at music schools and conservatories across the country teaching the mechanics of how to be a good musician, how to use the proper technique, how to write a chart, how to tell a Phrygian from an Ionian mode. And these are all very necessary tools to be an educated musician. But it is equally critical that our musicians are taught how to be effective storytellers, how to get inside of a lyric or a melody and create their own individual story that is then communicated honestly to an audience. How many of you in here remember the first time that you heard a song that changed your life or affected you in such a profound way that the mere mention of the title brings a smile to your face or a tear to your eye? In most cases, it wasn't so much the melody or the lyrics that did that, but the really honest performance of an artist. This is the art of great storytelling through music. We must be mindful in our education of this next generation that we not lose the heart of music.
Next, William Bevington, some information about information design.
Within the alumni is embodied the entire reputation of a university. And therefore, as students graduate, they're engendered with the seed that will lead to that. And I've been a citizen of the New School for 20 years. And I've always tried to do at least three things. One is to make sure that our students, when they leave here, enter into a very meaningful job, something that's powerful and rewarding to them. And that they wake up every day and they say, I love doing this. And my next job, which is more important, is that 10 years hence or 20 years hence or 30 years hence, they wake up and they say, I love doing this, all right? So I'm an information designer. I'm a senior information theorist within PIM and associate professor of information design within Parsons. And we teach this stuff. And basically, information design is essentially data visualization, but from the creative side, it's less deductive and more inductive. And our students attempt to really get big pictures of things rapidly and then bring that back to the engineering side. This is done by Jennifer Shim, and it's essentially the history of media, media use from 1850 till today. And you see these major disruptions of digitalization, and also that last section where you have the smartphone, where things are integrated. So I've used up my minute, but I'm going to give 20 seconds to Jennifer. She sent a letter to me 2 months ago, and modesty and time, those twin darts, caused me to take excerpts. But I just want to read a very short piece. She says, I talk with fellow colleagues and alumni on a daily basis and hear from them about their struggles as it relates to obtaining a full-time job. Fortunately for me, I've not yet had to apply for a job interview. Instead, recruiters and senior directors across the country have been finding my work and contacting me to inquire whether or not I would be interested in working for their company, even though I do not fit the standard 3 years experience criteria. Knowing and understanding how to construct big data visualizations enabled me to efficiently understand not only how to create design for tech prototypes, such as web and mobile, but also for internal communication pitches, prototype spec process sheets, etc. Thanks to your mentorship and guidance, my portfolio was found by the senior director of the visual tech division at Cisco Systems, headquartered in Silicon Valley. The salary was so significantly higher than average salary of an entry-level designer elsewhere. And I thank you. I hit the ground running.
Just as a reminder, for those of you who may have just joined us, either in the room or who are playing along at home, the hashtag, if you'd like to ask a question, is hashtag New School Alumni, or if you'd like to make a comment or say, go New School. Next, Catherine Rossiter from Drama, Exploring the Human Condition.
Theater is the most human of all art forms, collaborative in its production and reception. Its subject is innately what it is to be a human being. So says playwright Simon Stevens. Actors, writers, and directors dedicate their lives to the exploration of existence. For us at the New School for Drama, the human condition is not studied from a distance. We study it from the inside out. We intentionally confront ourselves and explore places in our minds, hearts, and souls that take us to the depth of being. We do this in the pursuit of truth, in order to transform ourselves so we can illuminate what it means to be human, moment by moment, or 60 seconds at a time. For our students, this requires remarkable fearlessness and courage. Eugene Ionesco wrote, "It is the human condition that directs the social condition, not vice versa." So in our building, way over at 151 Bank Street by the Hudson, our social research begins with the deeply personal in order to understand, inform, and reflect the universal, complete with despair in what humans are capable of, and hope and faith in their possibilities. Thank you.
And now Erin Cho, Empathetic Creativity, Transforming Challenges to Opportunities.
Hello. How empathy enhances creativity. This is one of the topics that I'm currently investigating with brain image methods. The heightened interest in creativity, particularly in business, is largely due to the mounting pressure to be innovative. The fast-changing business environment has created several dynamic and complex changes, which can be converted to opportunities depending upon your ability to think creatively. Interestingly, however, a recent study by Miller and others at University of Pennsylvania found that people are generally afraid of creative ideas. Particularly when facing uncertainty, people tend to associate creativity with words like vomit, poison, and agony. So what to do to overcome the fear and negative attitudes toward creative ideas and processes? My thesis is that training yourself to develop an empathetic perspective helps. Try to be motivated and willing to see the situation from the other's point of view. But why empathy? What does it have to do with creativity? My preliminary brain imaging study has indicated that taking this perspective increases the blood supply to the posterior cingulate cortex, which is related to one's ability to think creatively and positively even under high uncertainty. So practice putting yourself in others' shoes. A genuine concern for others and the intent to act on it will not only improve your personal relationships, but it also increase your ability to be creative, thereby competitive in the marketplace. Thank you.
I should have asked about this one before I started. Next is Mark Larimore. The talk is entitled either On the Job, the Book of Job and Seminar Pedagogy, or On the Job, the Book of Job and Seminar Pedagogy, or On the Job, the Book of... I'll let him do it.
I don't know. I've just published a book on interpretations of the Book of Job, which grew out of a seminar that I taught at Eugene Lang College. Here's a taste. Most people know the Book of Job through a single line. The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Or, he destroys the perfect with the wicked. Or, I will maintain mine own ways before him. Or, my favorite, have pity upon me, my friends, for the hand of God has touched me. The story of Job's devastation and restoration is basically a one-liner as well. But most of the book is not about what happens to Job. It's a discussion among friends trying to get beyond the one-liners to make sense of what's happened. As you might have heard, it's not the best discussion ever. People don't listen. They get angry. They go all ad hominem on each other. God intervenes, condemns Job's friends, but he also has Job rehabilitate them. Job's friendships are the first part of his life to be restored. People often describe the book of Job as the book of God and man, but in fact, if you read it, you'll see that Job is never alone with his God. For the most painful and powerful questions we wrestle with, the challenge and comfort of human discussion is beyond price. If you have no friends near, read the book of Job. It's a discussion, and you can enter into it. Thank you.
All right. Next, Tanya Kalmanovich, Does Music Matter?
All right, perhaps that's a rhetorical question. I'll leave it up to you to decide. But I want to tell you a story. So around age 14, I decided I wanted to be a professional musician. My mother warned me that it wasn't a stable path. And to some extent, Mom, you were right. I said it. Since I graduated from Juilliard in 1992, the music profession has suffered debilitating changes. And these days we tend to blame two familiar culprits for this, technology and the economy. But to me, it's really the same old story. It's that story telling us that music belongs at the margins, that music doesn't really matter, at least not as much as the stock market or the court system do. So I teach entrepreneurship classes at Mannes, and in these classes, we challenge this story. I argue that we need new language to talk about what music is and what music does in the world. So most of our conversations about music trade in universals. We ascribe magical powers to music. We talk about it building bridges, building peace, healing wounds, and so forth. I'm intellectually skeptical of universals. I'm much more interested in musical specifics. So, like Latanya asked you to do, think about a song that was important to you when you were young. Have you heard it lately and felt all of those feelings flooding back? So neuroscience shows us that music acts on both our explicit and implicit memory systems. That's your conscious and your unconscious memory. So you experience yourself at age 15 and age, say, 43, past and present self simultaneously. Now I want you to imagine everyone in the world who's ever heard that same song and loved it too. So the song contains their memories too, and their past and present selves. Hundreds of millions or billions of memories. Now imagine all the variations a song can take. Covers, misheard lyrics, they're called mondegreens, right? Fragments of melody, elaborate improvisations. And yet the song remains the same. So, from personal to cultural, across time and geography, music makes connections with dazzling speed and specificity and precision. So, does music matter? Well, I'd like to enlist your support for an idea. First, I'd like you to reconsider the ordinary song as a remarkable feat of social and cultural engineering. And from there, I'd like you to make a leap and move music from the margins of social conversations to the center where I believe it belongs. Thank you very much.
All right, just to keep everyone on your toes, we're going to skip around a little bit here. Is Inessa here? Yes? All right, then. By the time I've said your name correctly, perhaps we'll be ready to go. The next presenter is Inessa Medyabovskaya, How Literature Saves Our Lives.
Well, on my way here, I was asked if it's going to be a recipe of how literature helps you to lower your cholesterol. And I said, no, vice versa. It's how it forces your heart to skip a beat or two or three. So I'm teaching in the literature and liberal arts programs at Lang and the NSSR. And my topic is, it captures the unifying momentum for my recent work, a mix of archival research as well as interpretive writing on Tolstoy and the fates of the 20th century. I'm what you may call a so-called specialist. And Tolstoy himself said, beware of specialists and professors. And he never took his university degree. And then I go on with writing on writing and confinement and on classics in various commissariats of enlightenment. I investigate how texts in their afterlife forcefully intervene in the making of history and alter its course. I look at how totalitarian dictators and democratic leaders, political prisoners and social reformers, and what we call ordinary people read the same books under extreme conditions with different results. I detect those elements in literature that cause some to commiserate and develop mechanisms of resistance to cruelty, or vice versa, to develop inability for the acts of empathy. These thematic links inform the courses that I teach at the New School, and the sampler from next year is Revolution on Stage, Criminology and Salvation, War and Peace, Ideology and Intellectual Growth. Finally, I have to say that it is the students taking our courses, the soon-to-be alumni or the present alumni, who inspire us to think about the ways in which literature saves our lives. The age of historical romance, the veil between good and evil, giving birth to the meaning of woman, smarts, education and intelligence in the fashion world of Tolstoy fiction, and the poetry of Jaime Sabines are some of the topics of our graduates. Thank you.
All right, next up, Joel Towers, Leave It in the Ground.
Good afternoon. So, last May, during my New School Minute, I dedicated the 60 seconds I had to the social and environmental implications of this number, 400, as in 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. You may recall that this time last year, we had just reached 400 parts per million for the first time since the Pliocene, some 3 to 5 million years ago. This year, I want to talk about a different number. In fact, two different numbers. The first is 565, as in 565 gigatons of carbon dioxide, which is the amount of CO2 that we can dump into the atmosphere, largely by burning fossil fuels, in the next 40 years before we blow past 2 degrees Celsius warming. So think of 565 as our global carbon budget. The second number is 2,795. 2,795 gigatons of CO2 is the amount of the Earth's known fossil fuel reserves, which is to say all the coal, oil, and gas that has already been identified by energy companies, and it amounts to 5 times our total carbon budget. So if you think of these two numbers in relationship to each other, 565 as our budget, 2,795 as the carbon-based fuels energy companies want to pull out of the ground to burn, you can see the problem. If we burn these fuels, we have no future. But if we pull this fuel out of the ground, we're likely to burn it. In the last 10 years alone, we've put 320 gigatons of CO2 in the atmosphere, and we can only produce another 565 over the next 40 years. Which leads me to my point. We must leave it in the ground, or at least the vast majority of it. We need to do this. We need to redesign the world's products, systems, and services, and we need to do it fast. And this requires social change. Design and social change. That's New School, and it is at the heart of what we do here. And no matter what the challenge of any particular day, knowing that we are working every day to make positive change through design is what makes this place so great. Thank you.
Once again, we're going to skip to Evan Report. 59 seconds of hearing punk as blues.
Good afternoon, alumni. Punk's complex relationship to the blues is a central but widely unacknowledged part of its aesthetic. Punk is an extreme manifestation of the rock project, meaning that it depends on an association of raw and authentic expression with blackness, represented by the blues, combined with processes of white appropriation, transformation, obfuscation, and often a rhetorical denial of those blues resources. Punk musicians masked audible blues roots while retaining the blues' affect of raw power and authenticity, an extension of earlier musicians' responses to the intensified stakes of musical blackness in the 1960s and 70s. For example, the Stooges' proto-punk No Fun of 1969 is explicitly steeped in the blues, while the Teen Idol's 1980 version of the song obscures blues features with an ersatz white working-class British vocal style and a much faster tempo. Example, please.
No fun, my babe, no fun.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Next, Sakiko Fukuda Par. The Power of Numbers, the Intended and Unintended Consequences of the Millennium Development Goals.
We are the 99%. The slogan of the Occupy movement said it all about their purpose. Statistical data have become the quintessential tool of mobilizing around political causes in our electronic age of proliferating metrics, data sources, and belief in numbers. We just heard this from Joel Tallis. So when world leaders met to define their agenda for the 21st century, they too used the language of data. They listed the 8 most urgent challenges of development and set targets to be achieved by 2015. Unlike lofty statements about global poverty, these targets, the MDGs, had an aura of scientific certitude. They were a business plan, not just utopian ideals. They compelled people to act on poverty as global citizens. The MDGs were highly effective in raising awareness and mobilizing support, but they were not systematically embraced. And why is that? because numbers take a life of their own and have unintended consequences. MDGs began to redefine concepts like poverty as $1 a day, for example. Countries like Senegal were labeled failures even though they made faster progress than ever before, but starting from a very low level, they couldn't meet the 2015 targets. Activists in the Philippines were dismayed because education targets undermined their more ambitious demands. International women's rights networks were appalled because gender empowerment was dumbed down to enrollment in primary and secondary schools. And third world governments saw the MDGs as a power play in an unequal world that demanded nothing of the rich world but accountability from developing countries. So these numbers have unintended consequences. Are they benign, like most distracting gimmicks maybe? Or at worst, do they unleash the power of numbers to distort meanings, policy priorities, and reinforce power structures? I'm interested in how ideas change the world. Thank you.
Brian McGrath, rice paddies and parking lots.
Yes, from a descendant of potato farmers. It's great to follow Joel. I'm an architect and work in the areas of urban design and urban ecology. In order to leave it in the ground, we're going to have to work on the surface of the earth. As many other people maybe in the room in their 50s, I spent the last decade caretaking for my aging parents and returning to my hometown in the Connecticut River Valley, Springfield, Massachusetts. It was a shock to return to a landscape of farms and dense industrial mill towns to an area of incredible sprawl. The uncharismatic parking lot is the social center of this low-density city, and they act both as heat islands and headwaters to the water systems that used to power the mills. I had the pleasure of taking a sabbatical and research in Chiang Mai, Thailand, the historical capital of the Kingdom of Lana. Lana means a million rice fields. And in that landscape, there's a rich ethnography of the rich relationship of social ecology that creates a shared water irrigation system. So on the top, you see the rice paddies. On the bottom, you see the parking lots, the same scale. Connecticut Valley, Ping River Valley. And then in the next slide, and the slides thereafter, you'll see the Connecticut River on the left, the Ping River in Thailand on the right. And so in Thailand, I also discovered water's cultural and spiritual value beyond its economic value, the mill pond and the irrigation pond. And the EPA managing our wetlands and the spirits and the gifts to the spirits protecting the waters of Thailand. So water's cultural and spiritual value led me to a project that I hope to present next year in a minute, which is called Parking Paddies. How can we make parking lots more like rice paddies? How can we look at these parcelizations of asphalt and towards water retention rather than the displacement of water into our streams and ecosystems? Thank you very much.
Once again, that hashtag, if you have a question, is hashtag New School Alumni. All right, Alice Chun, Ground Rules in Humanitarian Design.
Hi, I'm a professor in design and material culture in the School of Constructed Environments, and I'm also an inventor of the Solar Puff, which is the first inflatable solar inflatable light. And basically, it flat packs, and then you can either blow it up with a puff or pop it open. And basically, it will give you light, low energy, high energy. And I know that the light, it doesn't really, it needs to be darker in here, but it also blinks for emergency situations. And basically, I got involved with solar energy after my son was born with asthma and realized that there are over 2 billion people in the world that live without electricity and use kerosene lanterns, which is a fossil fuel, to light their world at night. Could you imagine what that would do to our environment if 2 billion people stopped using kerosene lanterns to light their homes. So, and that led to the Solar Puff. And I believe that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Sumita Chakravarti, Crossing Borders, Transnational Media Studies.
Hi, everyone. The idea of crossing borders is central to transnational cinema and media studies, which is the area I have been working on lately. The trope of border crossing is, of course, now everywhere. Later this month, I will be attending a conference in Saarbrücken, Germany, which is devoted to this topic, and it's called Crossing Boundaries in a Post-Ethnic Era. I want to explore the tension between real physical borders, which are still difficult to cross, and the celebration in academic and intellectual life of the dominance of this idea. I feel that this is a crucial time for media studies, not only because it is crossing borders all the time, but because it has the grave responsibility of figuring out what it means to have borders and to transgress them. And this is an extension of the work that I had done many, many years ago when I actually traveled from India to the US and crossed one kind of border. And of course, had no idea that, this whole process would become almost a metaphor for life in the 21st century. So I welcome all of us, all of you, and especially the alumni from media studies on this journey of sharing. Okay, bye.
Sven Travis, Creativity Through Computation.
Hi, I'm Sven, professor of media design here at Parsons and the New School, and one of the founders a long time ago of the design and technology programs at Parsons. And I must say, it's one of my really great pleasures to have been around long enough to see some of our early graduates from design and technology actually grow up and become really important people. So it's cool. Here's my minute, if I can get back in my phone. Computer programming, coding, and scripting now plays a central role in the creative process. A role in many cases on equal par to traditional art and design tools. The computer is no longer just a tool. In design and technology, where I work and teach, we see computation as a central element in designing for today's world. And we believe computation is one of our great hopes in solving the world's problems. It doesn't matter whether you like computers or not. It doesn't matter whether you use them. Computers surround us, and the wise, creative individual is taking advantage of them. Thank you.
Alba Quesada from Drama, Freeing the Natural Voice.
So at the New School for Drama, we also work on freeing the actors' voices. So what is the natural voice? That's the voice that we were born with, the wail that expressed all our needs, the pang, and then life happens, and we're told to shush, We're told to quiet down. We begin to learn that it's not good to expose yourself too much, not show too much emotion. So we start to push the voice down, grab on, constrict things, hold our breath, and pretty soon the actors come into class and they're like talking in this way, and it's, you know, not much going on. The voice cannot reflect any human emotion if it's pushed down in this way. So we are, it all happens because of fear of being wrong, fear of saying something stupid, sounding different, sounding flamboyant, having too much emotion when you're supposed to be very in control and professional. And so we look to release these constrictions that come into the voice by, first of all, reconnecting with ourselves through a full, enjoyable breath and a sigh of relief, by believing that our thoughts and feelings live within our middles, our second brain. We have gut instinct. And allowing the breath to drop to its depth, to find those thoughts and feelings to come up through the channel, through the open throat, released jaw and tongue, finding vibrations that resonate on the bones of the skull and the ribs, and release with embodied sound through words and song. Thank you.
Chris Stover, Affect and Improvising Bodies.
When we talk about music analysis, or describe a compositional process, or suggest frameworks for how to perform in a particular style, we begin with objects. Here is a label you can assign to this harmony. Here is a formal design that you can fill in with data. Here is a scale that you can play in this situation. Objects are easy. Objects are comforting. But a focus on objects distorts the livedness of musical experience. To quantify a musical object by assigning it some determinate value is to bracket a vast array of potential ways that it might contribute to a sense of meaning that derives from the music's ongoing flow. An affective music theory begins with the in-betweenness that mediates objects and constitutes their very nature, a being in the world that begins with encounters, relations, passages, and relays. This involves the most under-theorized aspect of human music making, what happens when humans make music together. An interaction-first orientation. In fact, because musical objects are the products of performing bodies, it is better not to think of them as objects at all, but as actions. So a phenomenon like the clave of Cuban guaguancó is irreducible to a thing that we can notate on the page, not because Western notation is insufficient for representing diasporic African rhythmic processes, but because clave is not an object, it is an action. It is very difficult to represent verbs graphically. By recasting clave as an action, irreducible from the territory of lived performance, we can theorize musical syntax as qualitative change, and from there start to consider how musical meaning is engendered. Thank you.
We're in the home stretch. Simon Collins, Stories, Not Brands, Not Designers.
All right, hello everyone, timer. Okay, 1 minute. I talk a lot, so I'm going to try and say a lot of things, but I'm a bit disappointed because I wish I could have had more time to think about what Alba said. So I'm going to take deeper breaths. And I'm going to think a little bit harder about what, actually I won't think any harder because I already know what I'm going to say. Stories, not brands, not designers. You see, the thing is, it used to be, when I was a kid, that we all cared about being a designer. We wanted to be Jean-Paul Gaultier, and we desperately wanted that thing by Jean-Paul Gaultier, that jacket, and if we didn't get it, we were not going to be anything ever. And then, after a while, it changed, because you wanted something by Gaultier. It didn't have to be that thing. It had to be by the world of Gaultier. It had to be from Ralph Lauren. It could be homeware, or a plate, or we did Valentino the other day, and he did toilet seat covers. It could have been that. But that changed, you see, and I'm saying these things because Parsons has changed. I'm lucky enough to be the dean of the School of Fashion at Parsons, and it's changed. It used to be that you used to get a degree, and you go out and everyone knew what that was. It was a degree. It was very good, very impressive. Everyone knew what it was, and they knew what you could do. It's like the old-style education. which is fabulous. But we've moved on quite a lot from then. See, it's all about the story now. So going back to Gautier and Ralph Lauren, it's not enough to just buy stuff from the store with their name on it. You have to know about them, about their world, about the person, about the designer. Now my minute's gone. Bloody iPhones. I reckon that's about 30 seconds. But it's not enough. Now you need the social media, and you need to know all the things about them. You need to know who they are as a person, where they live, and all that sort of thing. And that's not even enough, because they want to know about you, so they can learn about what you are as a consumer. And I think the same applies to a Parsons degree and a Parsons graduate, because when you leave, you don't just say, I can design. You say, I can think. I can ask questions. I know how to learn. It's not about what you have learned. It's about how you've learned how to learn. And I think that's really important. That's a big difference. And that's not about learning the fact about the designer or the brand. That's about understanding what the story is and being able to tell your story. So I always give all my students a hint, a tip, which is do your homework. Don't show up unless you know what you're going to say. And I made a big point about not knowing what I was going to say today. I had no idea when I walked from there to here what I was going to say, which I'm quite pleased with, because you never know what's going to come out. It's what makes it exciting. So I don't know about you, but I just enjoyed the last minute. Thank you.
Excellent. Derek Hamilton, Rhetoric, Reality, and Race.
The rhetoric. We are post-racial. This narrative asserts that America has largely transcended the racial divide, and that the remaining divide or disparities is largely due to a collective dysfunction amongst blacks themselves. Blacks are enjoined to get over it, stop playing the victim role, stop making excuses, take personal responsibility. The reality. The black-white wealth gap is enormous. Liquid assets are those that can easily be converted to cash. Excluding retirement savings, the typical black family has only $25 in liquid assets, which would barely be enough to cover a cab ride to Brooklyn for most people. In terms of overall net worth, the absolute wealth gap exceeds $100,000, and the typical black family has a meager 6 cents for every dollar in wealth as a typical white family. Race. Race still is a defining attribute in one's life chances. Wealth is the single best predictor of economic opportunity, security, and human capability. The primary source of wealth is inheritance and in vivo transfers. This provides seed money to purchase an appreciating asset like a home or a new business. These are non-merit-based attributes. They are defined by one's position at birth. The racial wealth gap is structural, not behavioral. Upbeat. The solution. Baby bonds. Universal gradationally endowed trust accounts assigned at birth to be used as an adult to purchase an asset like a home or a new business. A baby bond program could dramatically close the racial wealth gap in about 2 to 3 generations. Let's break the cruel links between race, inheritance, and economic advantage or disadvantage. Instead, let's provide an opportunity for upward mobility and economic security for all Americans, regardless of race, class, and the economic position at birth. If you want to know more about baby bonds, here's some references.
Lisa Servon, Breaking the Banks.
I'm Lisa Servon. I teach with Derek, and I'm here to bring you more bad news from the policy school here at the New School. Okay. Raise your hand if you're completely satisfied with your relationship with your bank. That's what I thought. Why is that? I've spent the last 2 years trying to find out and answer that question. That's me working as a payday lender in downtown Oakland, California. And here's what I found. First, it's costing us more and more money to have a bank account. Banks have raised fees on everything from ATM withdrawals to wire payments, debit card replacements, and overdraft fees. Try to find a free checking account, and you're likely to spend a long time looking. Second, banks engage in unscrupulous practices, some of which you may not even know. Bank of America was recently ordered to pay $410 million to customers for wrongfully charging excessive overdraft fees. They like to do these things where you put money against your account, a few different checks, and they reorder the checks to maximize the overdraft fees that you get. We paid $38 billion as a nation in overdraft fees last year. Third, many of the 112 people that I interviewed told me the lack of transparency at banks contributed to the costs they incurred. People never know when their monthly fees will hit. Banks' checking account disclosure statements, something you get when you open a checking account, are supposed to be transparent. They're anything but. On average, these disclosure agreements are 111 pages long. That's twice the length of Romeo and Juliet. These problems affect us all, but they hurt low and moderate income people most. And to make matters worse, policymakers are convinced that the 28% of unbanked and underbanked Americans need a bank account more than anything else. Not a single person I interviewed told me that they really wished that they were more banked. They were more likely to say that they were unhappily banked than unbanked. Policymakers are simply out of touch with the unstable situations most Americans face. 40% of Americans spend more money than they earn month to month, and it's not on luxury goods. 76% of us have no savings whatsoever. We're having a real Marie Antoinette moment in Washington, D.C. You know, let them have bank accounts, and it's time to change that.
Will Milberg, Outsourcing Economics.
So I'm an economist. We practice strict hypothetico-deductive science. So I'm testing the hypothesis as to whether even a 60-second economics lecture can put you to sleep. In 2008, the world turned, and scholars as well, their attention to the financial sector, which brought down the world economy and which was the cause for recession, austerity, and great social difficulty. I looked the other way, which is that I looked at the production structure as opposed to the financial structure of the world economy. And what I focused on in my research, my project has been to look at the way that globalized production has affected economic security and income equality. And I looked at the way that production has evolved into a very fragmented process, whereby the typical consumer electronics product requires inputs from 20 different countries. The typical piece of apparel requires inputs from multiple countries. And this has great implications for the way international trade takes place, the way it's governed, and even for the theory of international trade, which I won't get into here, but it has overturned the traditional theory of comparative advantage. What we find in our research is some great gains in some places as a result of this fragmentation process. Fragmentation has helped certain Chinese sectors really get started and then take off. But it has also weakened many countries. And what we find in our research is that this globalization of production has contributed enormously to global insecurity. And it has contributed to increase in the profit share in both rich countries and poor countries, contrary to the theory of international trade, which talked about much more symmetric distribution of gains. Now, this great book by Thomas Piketty, Capital in the 21st Century, has focused on finance. It has focused on inherited wealth. It's focused on wealth. My research shows that there are also deep roots of the inequality problem that we face today, historic levels of inequality in the global structure of production, what we call global value chains. And so the question is Rana Plaza a game changer for labor standards? And Rana Plaza is a location in Dhaka, Bangladesh, where over 1,200 people died last year as the result of a sourcing strategy by lead firms, many based in this country, in which the supply chain is very fragmented to the point where subcontractors subcontracted further subcontractors, and there is no accountability. And what we find then is a governance structure that is simply unable to deal with problems like you see in this slide. which was a devastating problem that shouldn't be happening in 2013. And so the question is, has Rana Plaza changed the game for the way we think about global production and the way we think about the structure of supply chains? And the answer is that the response has been corporate social responsibility. Accord and alliance consortia of firms have gotten together. They have not solved the problem. The problem is much bigger than that. And the problem goes way beyond economics. Of course, economics, to stop, is immediately raises ethical issues, and it is, in a more immediate sense, political. And so my project is called Outsourcing Economics, which refers to the fact that I'm interested in the process of outsourcing and subcontracting, but to the critique of the economics profession, because it has outsourced really the responsibility to explain problems of globalization. And what we need to do is to draw on a much broader set of knowledges outside of economics, in politics, sociology, a variety of other, design as well, other professions. And this is the kind of economics that we try to do at the New School. Thank you very much.
And finally, Stephanie Browner, New York Poems in a New York Minute.
New York City, here at the New School, is our home, our playground, our laboratory, our life's blood. And to honor that, I've mashed up 4 New York poems by Walt Whitman, Langston Hughes, Galway Kinnell, and Nikki Giovanni. Here are your New York poems in a New School Minute. I was asking for something specific and perfect for my city, whereupon lo upsprang the aboriginal name, Mannahatta, a word liquid, sane, unruly, musical, magical, and self-sufficient for an island 16 miles long. Good morning, Daddy. I was born here, he said, watched Harlem grow, out of Penn Station, dark 10th of a nation, planes from Puerto Rico, and holds of boats, Chico, up from Cuba, Haiti, Jamaica, and buses marked New York, from Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, to Harlem, Brooklyn, the Bronx. On the shore, past the Navy Yard, under the Williamsburg Bridge, the Jamaica local crawls, and white-winged gulls flap. On the pier, a boy swings his legs. His days go by. A man stands on the pier. He has long since stopped wishing his heart were full. Oh, river, East River, flowing, we stand on the shore. And maybe some fall evening, when the taxis have passed you by, and that light sort of rain that occasionally falls in New York begins, you'll take a thought and laugh aloud, the notes carrying all the way over to me, and we'll run again together toward each other. Yes?
And that concludes this year's New School Minute. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our wonderful speakers.